So at that time, there was a lot of signs why I thought Toronto's real estate market was very undervalued.
Hey investors, Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're tuned in to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Thank you, friends, for joining us. Please hit that like. You can share this podcast. I know you're going to get a ton of value out of our guest today. His name is Sahil Jaggi, and I just want to read for you some of his accolades. Number one, he's been featured on Toronto Life, Globe and Mail, 4 times on the Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine, as well as the cover page of Real Estate magazine. Not to mention, he is himself an investor, a successful one, with a $20 million portfolio, including 16 properties with 34 doors. And on his real estate side, he is a top 1% realtor on TREB with $130 million plus sold. Now, this guy's an impressive dude. He knows a lot about the market, which is why we had such a fantastic conversation. If you want an opinion other than my own, but somebody who has a ton of success and experience in our market, you are not going to want to miss it. Please hit that like button if you're getting value, and feel free to send Sahil a message. He's a cool guy, and I know he can add value to you and your growing portfolio as well. Enjoy the show. Hi, Sahil. Thanks for joining us on the show today. How you doing?
Doing great, and thanks for having me.
I love connecting with people who have success stories, and you absolutely have a success story. You're homegrown. I know you've got a lot to share that way. You've built your portfolio here in Toronto, and you have so many wins in your past. Maybe you can shed some light as we kind of jump into, we're going to start getting into the market. I want to ask you where things are going to go in the future, but just to kind of set the groundwork on what you've come through so that our audience can see this is somebody worth listening to.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start from the very beginning. Like, I graduated from Laurier. I got my, economics and finance degree, and I moved to Wall Street to do investment banking. Didn't resonate with me, came back to Toronto, and I started, looking for a condo for myself. Being the economics major that I am, I guess I was starting to dive into the logic of why buying an apartment. At that time, it made more sense to buy a small bungalow. I moved into the basement and I rented out my main floor. And that's pretty much where my real estate journey began. The passion just sort of organically grew from there. I started, researching more and more about real estate. And this was back in 2010. So at that time, there was a lot of signs why I thought Toronto's real estate market was very undervalued. So fast forward 10 years today that I finished my entire, a decade in real estate investing. And currently I have a portfolio worth $20 million with 16 properties and 34 doors. And the best part is that it's at a 50% loan to value, which means that I have quite a lot of room that I can still use to grow the portfolio. And, it's been an amazing journey. I've actually 3 aspects of real estate, which is development, sales, and, investments. I'm doing pretty much all 3. So a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot of cool people that I've met, a lot of trades, a lot of construction workers, a lot of architects, a lot of designers, a lot of salespeople. So it's been an amazing journey. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to look into 2021 as we go into it.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a moment. So as you've scaled this very quickly. And just to highlight for our audience, you were featured in February of 2019 in the Toronto Life magazine. And the article was called How a 32-Year-Old Managed to Accumulate 10 Homes. Now, obviously, you've blown past that in the last couple of years. Yeah. And I'm also interested, as we get into the market, to hear this loan to value. You said it was 50%?
Yes.
That's very interesting. So I'm curious why you're sitting on 50%. We're going to talk about that on what the game plan is, because I'm sure you've got one. Yeah. And so very interesting stuff. Also for our audience, you are a realtor. You're a top performing RE/MAX realtor. Yeah. Now, do you tend to focus more on the investment side with those clients, or are you general real estate? What does that look like?
So 2010 to 2014, I didn't have my license. I was basically a real estate investor. I had a side job, and I was basically hiring different agents to do different work. I realized that there was a huge gap between, the knowledge that a lot of real estate agents were pretty much jack of all trades. I wasn't being able to find somebody who was specifically focusing on real estate as investments. And you know what, as my portfolio started growing from 2010 to 2014, 15, I decided to get my real estate license. And since then, my focus has been 100% on real estate investors, right? So 90% of people that are walking into my office today looking for properties are people who are real estate investors. They're not looking for buying properties on their own. Of course, we have that. Now I have the infrastructure with a team that can help them buy properties for themselves as well. But where I come into play and where I shine the most with my clients is having investor focused real estate investors.
Yeah, and no question, it's embarrassing actually when you look at the real estate industry, the lack of understanding of investing. And
Absolutely.
so kudos to you. And I would encourage any real estate professional, if you want to say you're an investor realtor, to actually learn about investing. It's a whole different can of worms. So, okay. So you've grown this portfolio. Now you started in your early 20s, I believe.
Yes.
How in the world does a guy in his early 20s qualify for this many properties this fast? What did that process look like?
So my growth was based on two things. One, it was accelerated equity growth, which is one of the main points I was able to grow so fast. Obviously, when I started investing, coming back to the loan to value, I wanted to keep it at a conservative 80%. Obviously, I was putting down 10% and partnering with someone, and we're buying properties with 20% down. 2010, the values of properties that I was buying was about $500,000, $600,000 for bungalows in centrally located areas of Toronto. So at the time, I was buying mainly in the Yonge and Sheppard, Yonge and Finch area. Bungalows, 50-foot lots were, small bungalows on big pieces of land, ability to have dual income. Those kinds of projects I was buying into 2010. From 2010 to 2011, 2012, if the market was appreciating at about 8 to 10%, my properties were beating the market by almost 14 to 15%. And I say that to everybody. From 2010 to 2020, you could be on a plane, throw a dart anywhere in Toronto, and everything's increased, right? So if on an average, markets increase by 8% and you've increased by 8%, you're no one special. How much do you beat the market is by what really makes you a good investor or not. So if you look at, all the properties that I was investing in was, very undervalued. We obviously added some sweat equity into it and forced appreciation. But at the same time, with market support, we were able to get that equity to really, really appreciate and go to the next level. The second thing, how I helped grow was also joint ventures. Even though in single family homes, I've always been a 50-50 partner with whoever I joint ventured with. And we've always brought in, so if he's bringing in $1, I'm bringing in $1 to match that 50-50 structure. But joint ventureship really helps you accelerate and scale faster, and at the same time helps you mitigate as a new investor. So I think it's really important to obviously pick your partners right. And if somebody you can find with the same goals, same aspirations, and same kind of, just like a good mix between passive and active investors, you could really scale fast with those two things that I personally use to accelerate my portfolio that's fast.
I love that. So has every property been through a JV or just since the first one?
No. So first property was a JV, second was not. So over the course, now that I have 16 properties, 6 of them are personally owned. So I have 6 properties that I own 100% outright, and the 10 properties that I own as joint ventureship.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because we hear joint venturing happening very much at the apartment level, which is kind of the space that I play in. But when you hear on the residential side, power to you. You did that right out of the gate in your early 20s. I wish more people would, kind of recognize the power and the strength of that, whether it's qualifying for mortgages, which is a big question mark nowadays. So you're a smart dude. I love this. And I love the attack force appreciation, buying in the right markets, and that comes with the experience. Even before you were licensed, you had that know-how. Okay. So let's look forward now. Okay. So let's take everything that you've built up to this point, because people are gonna be like, oh, you bought a $500,000 bungalow. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. That doesn't mean the strategy ends. Maybe it's just changed a little bit. So what do you see happening? I'll let you go a little bit here on different markets. What do you think the market's going to look like and what's going to do in 2021?
Yeah. So even before I get to 2021, what I want to say is this year has been absolutely insane, right? But at the same time, as coming back to the LTV of lower LTV, what it gives you is that it gives you that ability to take a little bit extra risks, right? Because I have that threshold or capacity to take extra risks. Initially, when you're in the growing phase, yes, your LTV is going to be a little higher, but as you grow your equity, the goal should always be, how do I make my loan to value be at that 60 to 65 or 70%, which is a balanced LTV level, right? And I keep mentioning LTV because that's one of the most important metrics to me as a real estate investor, because people could be obsessed with getting doors and I want to buy 10 doors, I want to buy 20 doors, and if you're scaling really fast, but you're operating at 90% loan to value, then you're actually at a much more risk than actually not owning those doors, right?
Absolutely.
So and as you said, like 2010, I was buying houses for 500, 2011 for 600, 700. I've always been able to pivot the areas that I'm investing in. So if I see an area that is now saturated and I feel like with 20% down, I'm not being able to break even my cash flow, that's usually a cue for me to like go and start looking at different neighborhoods that are then offering with the same fundamentals about 600 to 700 to $800,000. To give you an example, this year I purchased 3 properties, and all those 3 properties were in the 800s. So 10 years later, it's still not too different. The only difference is that the area has switched with the same fundamentals. What are these fundamentals? Number one, your cash flows should be breaking even with 20% down. Number two, they should be small homes and big pieces of land that are poised towards some equity appreciation. And number three, they should be attracting fantastic tenants based on the location and all that. Because return on investment sounds great, cap rate sounds great, and all these things sounds great, but your experience as a real estate investor is only going to grow, and you're only going to passionately be able to or motivated to grow if you're going to have good experiences with tenants as well. So you have to factor that in advance. So I think what I want to tell everybody is that there's still opportunities to buy within that $700,000 to $900,000 mark in Toronto, believe it or not, in areas that are poised towards some growth. So you don't have to feel like everything is above $1 million or $1.5 million. Yes, what I purchased back in 2010 for $600,000-700,000 is now worth 1.5, but there are different areas with similar fundamentals that you can always look at that are gentrifying, that are looking towards development and growing in that purchase price, right?
Let's tease everyone and say we're not going to tell the specific locations, but you can send a DM to Sahil and he'll give you some of the goods. How about
exactly. That? I don't usually give out exact locations, but what I can do is point out the fundamentals so that people can try to follow those fundamentals and go look for the similar locations.
Beautiful.
Or you can DM me and I'll tell you exactly where to buy.
Sounds good.
So
awesome.
2021. Look, like currently we're entering another lockdown on Monday, right? Typically in the last 4 to 5 months, I've seen and everybody's seen that real estate has been extremely resistant towards this downturn, right? Initially, I was like, okay, sales are starting to come down. And typically when sales go down, there's a lag between price and sales, and you'll eventually see the prices go down. But what happened is that because supply also tightened and lower interest rates really helped pump that kind. And honestly, it was a big wake up call for people in the condo market. So as we talk about 2021, I actually want to separate different kind of asset classes for you and your viewers, right? What I want to do is when you look at buying real estate, you have to understand that every type of asset class, in my opinion, is going to move differently in 2021. How are condos going to perform are very different from how bungalows are going to perform, are very different from how luxury homes are going to perform. So my thinking is that, you have to look at certain trends. I'm a big believer of following trends. So as we go into 2021, it's a lot of wake up call for a lot of people. They're starting to realize that small spaces are just not, viable anymore. They want to be in, concepts like working from home is becoming a lot more popular. Teaching their kids is becoming a lot more popular. Having a backyard is more important than ever. Having a basement apartment is a lot smarter. So if you look at all these trends, I believe that the detached specific bungalow market is going to perform extremely well. I think the luxury market is also going to do well because, and when I say luxury, I'm talking about $1.5 to $2.5 million new homes. I think a lot of people are going to now start doing this family planning when they have to understand, like, look, they don't have to, a lot of small businesses are shutting down. A lot of accountants are starting to move their offices into their homes. So they're willing to spend a little bit more into their homes with lower interest rates and be able to afford more. So I think that segment of $1.5 to $2.5 million in Toronto is going to do well. Bungalows, to me, provides that perfect missing middle for people who want to get out of the condos and can't afford to leave the city, right? So to me, having that same 1,200 to 1,300 space with 2 or 3 bedrooms on the same floor and having that separate basement apartment to able to offset some of that mortgage and to be able to rent that to somebody else or to be able to use that as an office is going to be a very, very popular missing middle that I think is there in Toronto. Right. So I think bungalow detached going to perform well. Semi-detached is going to be performing well with background. But I think that condos, to me, for the last 4 years, I've been screaming, has been on a slippery slope. And with a little bit of push, I think everything's going to start falling. I think there's a huge amount of correction that condo is poised to have, and rightly so. I think with pre-construction and this whole hype of condos, these prices of $1,200 a square feet, $1,300 a square feet are ridiculous to begin with. And anybody who is now looking into or is locked into pre-construction with all this supply coming in and the rental market taking a big hit as well, all the investors that are going to be buying these pre-construction are going to be very scared. So I see a not very good future for condos, but I see a good future for that pent-up demand coming out of condos into these smaller homes in Toronto.
Very interesting. I love it. I love the predictive approach as well. A lot of people are scared to put their neck on the line with those types of predictions. So Okay, so let's also, the other side to that coin is not just the housing type, but the location, proximity to the downtown core. Do you see a difference in the way, as we going to go back to the fundamentals, are you more zeroed in still in Toronto proper, or are you kind of looking outskirt communities? Do you find that that might be a better, plan of attack right now?
Yeah. So to be honest, I'm still in Toronto, but the only place I've managed to scope just a little outside Toronto has been in the West End, Southwest End, which is Lakeview, Mississauga, or areas like Port Credit, which you can almost call they're at the boundary of Toronto, right?
Right.
So if this is Long Branch, which is the westmost part of Etobicoke. This is Lakeview. You're almost like you're in Toronto. And the reason why I've invested in that area is because I think there's a lot of new development coming there. It's still
There is.
got really amazing, access to three major highways. It's got GO train stations, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't feel comfortable still stepping out of Toronto because I don't think Toronto, if you're buying the right kind of property in Toronto, I think there's a lot more appreciation that Toronto's ability to take. I think Toronto still, certain portions of Toronto is still very undervalued. Certain asset classes, if you know how to pick them right, there's still a lot of juice left. They're not ripe yet. With $1.2 million immigrants coming into the city, and all the political instability in the world, healthcare being offered in Toronto, good education being offered in Toronto, I think Toronto still has a lot going for itself. And with instability in the US because of COVID and because of the political instability, I think Canada is going to be the new America, right? So you're going to see a lot of
I hope
people,
not.
right? I think it's now Canadian dream. There's no more, nobody says the American dream anymore, right? It's always
Right.
now the Canadian dream. They want
Absolutely.
to be safe. They want to be in a safe country. They want to be in a clean country. And I think Canada is going to start with friendly immigration structures. If you look at the psychology of an immigrant, to me, and I'm an immigrant, I came to the country when I was 16 years old, right? So I understand. I talk to a lot of people who are from back home. And when I chat with these people, I feel the frustration of these people. And when I ask them, like, look, you can still come to Canada and live in Barrie or Hamilton, they don't have a goddamn clue where that is. Everybody, to them, when they leave a country, want to be in somewhere where that's familiar to them. And for that, they're going to first start with Toronto. So Toronto is still the central location of this state that I think so that's why I refuse to get out of Toronto currently.
I love that you're popping the hype of getting into the 905, because I haven't had many people say that. So though you like the low rise housing type, you still believe in the city, which I very much agree with. I think it's overhyped. I think a lot of people are running away, and it'll be interesting to see when the elastic band flicks and it comes back to the city, who got in and who didn't. That's my perspective. So I actually am very similar to you. I love that approach. So now in the short term, we've got this lockdown now that's happening. And so what do you see that playing out? Like, how is that going to affect the overall market? Maybe are we going to have some kind of bounce around like we did in the first one? What do you think, if you were kind of speculate?
Look, it's also a lot to do with rentals. You have to keep a very close eye on the rental prices. And then what's concerning me a little bit is that as Toronto downtown rental prices are decreasing sharply, the availability of rental units downtown is going to cause it's going to cause a big stir, right? It's going to disrupt some of that rental market, and that could affect the way people also look at investments, right? So for example, if you're looking at duplexes, triplexes, a lot of the people who are making these moves to 905, I don't want to question, like, you also have to know where in 905 and what kind of fundamentals they're following. So I don't typically want to say that 905 is wrong. What I think is that if you're looking for extreme fast appreciation and you're looking to also put your money in a place where it's not a reactive force, like, hey, there's COVID, so let's buy there. I buy real estate as a long-term fundamentals have to make sense, right? Where is the next 5 to 10 years when this whole COVID is going to be blowing up? Where are people still going to want to live, right? So from that perspective, I think Toronto is a little bit like risk averse to me, as much as people think that, yes, maybe the price points are a little higher, but I still feel with the right purchase price of that sweet spot of 700 to, like, let's say 950, depending on what you're purchasing, that to me is still a sweet spot. And it's a lot more risk averse than going into Hamilton and going into these places, because these areas are a lot more volatile and they're a lot more reactive to current trends, which they go up and down like that, versus Toronto is in a clean straight line.
Interesting. Awesome. Okay. So now take your success hat off and let's put you all the way back to, let's say you're going to start today, right? You don't have this amazing portfolio and you're like, okay, I'm listening to this guy, Sahil. He sounds like this is something we can keep doing. What does that look like? Like, what would you do differently today? Or would it look very much the same as far as your strategy goes?
For a newcomer, the biggest thing is if you're not working with the right experts, you are just delaying the process of success, right? There is so many people out there that you can look, you can follow. The biggest thing you want to make sure is that there's so much, it's confusing for a lot of people with social media, and I mean, and everybody poses as an expert, right? Make sure if you're looking into a real estate as a real estate investor entering the market, working with a person who has experience of their own investment, as you said, the way I look at someone is that all these people who are posing as investment experts, and you ask them how much are they invested into real estate, it's almost nil in some cases, right? To me, that's ridiculous. You have to be an investor first and be in a position to recommend to people. The way I talk to people and the way I talk to my clients is that I never recommend them to buy something unless I've already purchased it myself. So it almost becomes a place of credibility for them to come to me and say, Sal, why do you think this is a good investment? I give my pitch and I say, look, money where my mouth is, because I've already purchased something very similar. So that gives people a lot of comfort that A, this guy knows what he's doing, and B, so what I tell people is that look for people who are investing in, you can resonate with few different strategies. If Toronto doesn't work for you, look in Hamilton, Mississauga, but work with someone who has experience, not just selling properties there, but buying properties there, because they really have to know the after effects of the sale too. Once the sale is done, what kind of people are tenanting this property, what kind of neighborhood this is, where this whole trends are going. So work with the right experts is number one. If you want to be a long-term real estate investor, look for a good mentor. I think that's a really smart way of accelerating your knowledge, right? And number three is, like JV. JV is a fantastic way to, not be able to like dump your entire savings, but just mitigate your risk and working with someone. So initially, if you have to put in a little bit extra work, if you have a good idea and a good research plan and a good expert that's helping you, there's always going to be money available through joint ventures. You just have to pick the right partner, and you have to have a good plan, and you have to just match the two. That's the best way for any newcomer to come in, A, mitigate their risk and get exposure into real estate if they feel like it's too expensive.
Yeah. And Sahil, just so our audience knows, you also, I believe you're in coaching, right? Are you looking for students as well?
Well, I started a 2-day boot camp in which I used to do like 2 8-hour straight classes and, 16 hours of amazing content, start from the beginning. But because of COVID, that got disrupted. And I'm the kind of person who likes to meet people in real life when I'm coaching them. It's very difficult to do it over Zoom. I also like to give people live examples. So if I take somebody as a student for coaching, I will sit down with them. I'll explain them the fundamentals. I want to take them through the walkthroughs. And I've done that through the way of, I do a lot of people have interned in my office, a lot of different kinds of coaching things. So yes, I'm absolutely interested in coaching, but I prefer doing it in person rather than, a Zoom call or anything like that.
Yeah, I get it. So I anticipate you're probably going to have some people wanting to send you messages to connect so that when things reopen, I just wanted to kind of set the tone for that. So if anyone has any questions for Sahil, they can also leave it in the comments. We can respond to that. But dude, this has been a great interview. I love talking to people that actually know what's going on in the market. So where can our audience find more information and follow you?
The most amount of content is going to be on Instagram at Mink Real Estate. We're now rebranding and starting a brand new website, which is minkrealestate.ca, specifically focused for our real estate investors. I want to make my branding very, very clear to everybody that I'm in the business with 100% focus on helping people find investments. Investments don't really have to be, and how we do find right investments for people is number one, find your affordability, and then create a strategy around that affordability to say, okay, if somebody has 100,000, 150,000 or 200,000, where will that money sit and provide you with the absolute maximum return? That's the whole point of this entire, I'm spending 8 to 10 hours. I have people now door knocking, cold calling, all looking for properties just for investors. So if anybody has anything that they want to reach out, they want to look into growing their portfolio, get into investments with the right fundamentals, reach out, and I'm more than happy to help and have all the infrastructure and the right agents now coming onto the team doing that exact same thing, because I just think there's not enough people out there that can help people look for investments. And I don't plan to be a jack of all trades, and I specifically want to focus on real estate investors for the next 5-6 years.
Awesome. Awesome. Folks, if you guys learned some stuff today talking to Sahil, please hit that like button. Please share it on your Instagram. You can tag Sahil. You can tag us at Watson Estates. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your insight on the show. Thanks for coming out.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.